The night was heavy with fog, a thick grey curtain that swallowed the moonlight before it could touch the ground. Mark Daniels slowed the van as it climbed the narrow road leading to the long-abandoned St Helena State Hospital. The tires crackled over gravel and dead leaves, the sound echoing in the empty woods. "This is it," Mark said, killing the engine. His breath formed clouds in the cold October air. St Helena, home of the vanished 73. Laura Finch stepped out next, clutching her notepad close. She had read about this place 100 times before. The patients who disappeared one night in 1965, the staff that fled without explanation, and the single surviving doctor who refused to speak until his death. But reading about it and standing in front of it were two very different things. The building loomed ahead like a mausoleum, its windows dark sockets, its walls slick with years of moss and decay. Tom Reed, the sound tech, swung his recording gear over his shoulder and muttered, "Looks smaller in the pictures." Mark smirked. "Everything's smaller in pictures, except the ghosts." Laura frowned. "Don't joke about that. We're not here for ghost stories. We're here for truth. Truth sells less," Mark said, raising his camera. "But fear always sells." A gust of wind blew through the iron gates, making them creak open with a long metallic groan. Tom's flashlight flickered as he pointed it toward the entrance. "Did anyone push that?" "No," Laura said softly, but the uncertainty in her voice betrayed her. Mark glanced at his watch. 10:37 p.m. Perfect timing. "Let's make history," he said, stepping through the gates first. The courtyard was littered with broken glass, vines twisting around rusted wheelchairs and overturned gurneys. The smell of wet earth and old disinfectant clung to everything. Somewhere, water dripped steadily. Plink, 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 like the ticking of a clock buried underground. Laura's flashlight caught a faded sign, nailed crookedly to the wall. "Ward 3, restricted access." "Let's start there," she said. "That's where they kept the violent ones." Tom hesitated. Violent patients of violent staff. Mark looked over his shoulder, a grin spreading across his face. "Does it matter? Inside, the hospital was worse. The floor tiles were cracked, peeling in places like scabs. The walls bore faint brown stains that no one dared identify. The ceiling sagged under years of water damage. Every door they passed seemed to whisper, as the wind slithered through the broken windows. Mark stopped at the entrance to Ward 3. "Laura, you take notes. Tom, start recording." As the flashlight beam slid across the wall, they saw a name etched into the peeling paint. "Eleanor Gray." "Who's that?" Tom asked. Laura flipped through her notes. "Patient 41A, admitted in 1964. Schizophrenia, auditory hallucinations, self-harm tendencies. She was one of the 73 who vanished." Mark leaned in closer, tracing the name with his glove. "What do you think happened to her?" Before Laura could answer, Tom's recorder crackled. A faint hiss filled the air. Then a voice. "Help! Me?" Tom's head snapped up. "You heard that, right? It's interference," Mark said quickly, though the tremor in his voice betrayed his confidence. Old buildings mess with signals, but Laura had gone pale. "That wasn't interference," it said. Before she could finish, the hallway light flickered once, then twice, and from somewhere deep in the building came the unmistakable sound of metal scraping against tile. Mark lifted his camera and snapped a photo, the flash slicing through the dark. For half a second, they all saw it. A shadow leaning against the far wall, human-shaped but wrong. The limbs too long, the head tilted at an unnatural angle. When the light vanished, the shadow was gone. Tom took a step back. "We should." A sharp bang echoed through the corridor, cutting him off. A door had slammed shut behind them. Laura rushed toward it, pulling at the handle. "It's locked." "It wasn't locked before." "Calm down," Mark said, forcing his voice steady. "We'll find another way out." They moved deeper into the ward, the narrow beam of their flashlights slicing through the dark. The deeper they went, the colder it got. A damp, biting chill that seemed to seep through skin and bone. They passed an open door labeled Treatment Room 2. Inside, the walls were covered with old medical charts. Half burned, the ink faded but still legible. Laura picked one up from the floor. The name at the top read, Eleanor Gray. Subject complains of voices urging her to remain awake. Laura read aloud. Patient claims sleep leads to visitation by dark figures. Sedation increased to 60 milligrams. Mark's flashlight swept over the far wall, and he froze. Scrawled in what looked like dried blood were the words, "I am still awake." The air shifted, heavy, pressing down on them. Tom's recorder started again, hissing. Then, a woman's voice whispered through the static. "Are you here for your medicine?" Laura dropped the chart, her hands shaking. "Mark, turn off the recorder!" But Mark didn't move. He was staring straight ahead at the corridor, camera trembling in his hands. Slowly, he raised it and took another photo. The flash lit up a figure, standing just beyond the reach of their lights. A woman in a faded nurse's uniform. Her skin grey, her mouth a thin red slit. She tilted her head. The sound that came from her was not human. A rasping breath that scraped the air. Tom stumbled backward, hitting the wall. "Jesus Christ! Run!" Laura hissed. "Run!" They turned and sprinted down the corridor. The lights above them flickered violently, casting stuttering shadows that moved faster than they did. Behind them, the sound of footsteps echoed. Slow, deliberate, and getting closer. Tom tripped over a fallen chair and crashed to the ground. Mark and Laura pulled him up, but as they did, they saw something crawling across the ceiling. A human figure moving upside down, its joints bending the wrong way. The smell of rot filled the hallway. Mark swung the camera up, snapping picture after picture. The flashes painting the walls in bursts of white light. In one of those flashes, the figure was inches from him. Pale eyes staring, mouth open in a silent scream. Then, darkness swallowed everything again. Laura's voice broke through the silence. "Mark, Tom, where's the door?" There was no answer, only the faint sound of breathing. But it was not hers. Her flashlight flickered once, twice, then died. In the darkness, the voice came again, right beside her ear. "It's time for your medicine," Laura screamed, stumbling backward, but her hands met only cold metal. The door of a patient room. She flung it open and fell inside, slamming it shut. Her chest heaved as she pressed herself against it, tears streaming down her face. Outside, the footsteps stopped. The silence that followed was worse than any sound. Then, slowly, the handle began to turn. Laura pressed her palms over her ears. "Go away, please!" The door stopped moving. And then, a whisper through the crack. "We're still awake." The lights in the hallway went out completely. Somewhere, deep in the hospital, a camera flash flickered one last time, and someone laughed. Laura didn't remember how she made it down the narrow stairwell. The only thing she could recall was the sound of her heartbeat, pounding in her ears, and the sight of her own trembling hands, gripping the flickering flashlight. Every creak of the steps beneath her felt like a scream. When she reached the basement, a wall of cold, damp air hit her so hard it nearly stole her breath away. The tunnel stretched ahead, carved out of stone and old brick, twisting like the roots of something ancient. This was where the hospital once stored its dead. The old morgue, the autopsy chambers, and the underground passageways that connected every wing. Mark and Tom's footsteps echoed behind her as they caught up, their faces pale under the dying light. "Jesus," Tom whispered, shining his flashlight across the curved walls. "It smells like something died down here." Mark gave a short laugh, trying to sound brave, but failing miserably. That's because something probably did. A lot of somethings. Laura didn't respond. Her eyes were fixed on a rusted gurney, lying overturned in the corner. Its wheels frozen with age, dried streaks of something dark ran down the side of it. And for a brief moment, she thought she saw the wet shine of fresh blood. "Let's just document the place and get out," she said. 5 minutes. That's it. Tom nodded quickly. Agreed. They moved deeper into the tunnel, the walls closing in around them. Every sound seemed to chase its own echo. The drip of water, the shuffle of their boots, the faint static of Tom's recorder. The deeper they went, the colder it got, until they could see their breath hanging in the air. Laura raised her flashlight and saw faint writing smeared across the wall. Long, uneven letters scratched in what looked like fingernail marks. "We're not gone," she froze. "Mark, look at this." He leaned in, snapping a photo. "Real or fake?" "It's old," Laura whispered. "Maybe from the patients." Tom swallowed. Patients don't write things like that. They kept moving. After a few yards, the tunnel widened into a larger chamber. Metal tables lined the walls. Most of them toppled over. Jars filled with cloudy liquid sat shattered on the floor. Labels were peeling off, but Laura could make out a few words. Adrenal tissue, ocular specimen, grey, Helena. Mark crouched beside one of the tables. This must have been the autopsy room. Tom's recorder began to hum with a low pulsing sound, like a heartbeat made of static. He tapped it, thinking it was malfunctioning, but the rhythm grew louder. Thump, thump, thump. Mark frowned. Is that the mic picking up feedback? Tom shook his head. No, it's... The heartbeat stopped. Then a soft voice came through the static, faint, fragile, but unmistakable. Don't stop. Keep them asleep. Tom's eyes widened. That's a woman's voice. Laura's flashlight beam trembled in her hand. "Eleanor Gray," she whispered. The light flickered once, and in that flicker, something moved behind one of the tables. The shadow of a woman standing perfectly still. When Laura turned the beam toward it, the shadow was gone. "Mark," she said, her voice thin. "Take a picture, now." He lifted the camera and pressed the shutter. The flash exploded against the darkness, revealing a dozen shapes lining the back wall. Human forms standing upright, faces covered with cloth, their bodies rigid and still. Tom's voice broke. "Are those mannequins?" Laura took a step closer, dread churning in her gut. She reached out with trembling fingers and brushed against one of the figures. The fabric tore slightly. Underneath wasn't plastic. It was skin, dry, cold, and grey. She screamed and stumbled backward. The flashlight fell from her hand, spinning across the floor and landing beam up. The figures moved, slowly, mechanically, heads turning toward them in one motion. Mark raised his camera again, but his hands were shaking so badly that the next flash came out blurred. Still, in that moment of white light, Laura saw their eyes, glassy and sunken, yet aware. One of them opened its mouth, a long rasp escaping, like air leaving a broken lung. Tom backed toward the exit. "We're leaving, right now," but the tunnel behind them was no longer empty. From the shadows came the echo of footsteps, dozens of them, accompanied by the sound of something dragging along the floor. Laura grabbed Tom's arm. "Run!" They sprinted through the twisting tunnel, the beam of the flashlight bouncing wildly across the walls. Every few seconds, a soft whisper followed them. "Wake up! Wake up!" Mark fell behind for a moment, fumbling with his camera. I dropped. "Wait!" Laura turned back, but he was gone. His flashlight rolled across the floor, its beam settling on the wall, where a fresh message had appeared in blood-red letters. "He's awake now." Tom stopped running. "Where is he? Mark!" A flash went off deeper in the tunnel. A blinding, unnatural burst of light, followed by silence. Then came a low groan, deep and wet, like the sound of something breathing through water. Laura and Tom stared into the darkness. "That wasn't him," Laura whispered. They took off again, turning a sharp corner. Ahead of them stood a metal door, half buried in rubble. Laura kicked at it until it creaked open. The room beyond was lined with old medical equipment and a massive observation window that looked into a chamber filled with empty beds. "Is this another ward?" Tom asked, panting. "No," Laura said. "It's a holding room, for the ones they experimented on." The heartbeat returned, louder now, shaking the walls. Tom clutched his chest. "I can feel that. It's not sound. It's in the air." Something slammed into the glass window from the other side. Both of them screamed. A pale face pressed against the surface. Eyes milky white, mouth stretched into a grin that split the cheeks. It was Mark, but his skin looked waxy, his eyes unfocused. He raised one hand and pressed it against the glass, leaving a smear of blood behind. "Mark!" Laura shouted. "We're coming!" He mouthed something, slow and deliberate. "It's her." Then he was yanked backward, vanishing into the dark chamber. The glass cracked, and blood began to seep through. Tom turned to Laura. "We have to go now." They ran for the door, but it slammed shut on its own, the handle jerking violently. The lights flickered and went out again, leaving them in complete darkness. A voice whispered from the corner of the room. "He's not gone. None of them are." Laura spun around, shining her flashlight, and saw the nurse from the photo. Her uniform was torn, her cap tilted, one eye milky and blind, the other burning with something that wasn't human. She moved closer, her shoes scraping softly against the concrete. Tom lifted a metal pipe from the floor, his hands shaking. "Stay back." The nurse tilted her head, that same eerie smile spreading wider across her face. "It's medicine time." She lunged. The lights exploded, showering sparks across the floor. Tom swung the pipe, but it passed through her as if she was smoke. A moment later, his scream echoed through the tunnels. Laura ran. She didn't look back. She ran until her lungs burned, and her flashlight began to dim. The whispers followed her, blending with the steady, mechanical heartbeat that filled every inch of the asylum's underground maze. At last, she collapsed against a door, pushing it open with the last of her strength. She tumbled into the open air of the courtyard, coughing, gasping, crying. The dawn was still hours away. The forest was silent. She turned back to look at the asylum, its windows glowing faintly red, as though something inside was still alive, still watching. And then, from deep within the tunnels, she heard Mark's voice, calm, steady, and wrong. "Laura, you forgot your medicine." When Laura opened her eyes, everything was white. The light above her flickered, a cold fluorescent hum filling the silence. Her body felt heavy, like she was buried under wet sand. The smell of antiseptic and iron hung in the air. Too clean to be real, too sharp to belong anywhere but inside a nightmare. She tried to move, but her wrists wouldn't budge. Leather straps held her down against a steel table. Panic bloomed in her chest as she strained against them. Her breath came in ragged bursts. The sound echoed, but there was something else. The slow rhythm of footsteps coming closer. "Don't struggle," a voice said softly, a woman's voice. Calm, almost kind. "You'll hurt yourself." Laura turned her head toward the sound. The shape that stepped into view wore an old nurse's uniform, yellowed with age. The badge on her chest was cracked but legible. Helena Grey. Her hair hung in stringy clumps, and her skin looked as pale as candle wax. One of her eyes was milky white, the other dark and alive, with something that didn't belong in a human face. Laura's throat tightened. Where am I?" The nurse smiled. "You never left St Helena, dear. You've just been resting." "That's not possible," Laura whispered. "I ran. I made it out. Eleanor's smile widened, stretching too far, the corners of her mouth splitting like paper. "You think you ran, but no one runs from medicine." Laura jerked against the straps, the leather biting into her skin. "Let me go, please." The nurse picked up a rusted syringe from a tray beside the table. Its needle gleamed under the trembling light. "You need your dose. You've been very sick. The voices told me you weren't sleeping." "I'm not sick." Laura screamed. "I'm alive." The nurse leaned closer until Laura could smell her. The rot beneath the perfume, the metallic tang of old blood. "Alive?" she whispered. "Do you think the others weren't alive when they came to me?" Behind her, something moved. The darkness at the edge of the room began to ripple, and from it emerged figures. Dozens of them, dressed in torn hospital gowns, their skin grey, their eyes hollow. They stood in silence, their heads twitching every few seconds like broken dolls. Eleanor glanced at them fondly. They've all had their medicine. They sleep now, peacefully. But you, she tilted her head. You keep waking up. Laura's heartbeat pounded in her ears. Where are Mark and Tom? The nurse's expression softened. Tom screamed for a long time. He didn't like the medicine at first, but he's resting now. Laura's lips trembled. And Mark? Eleanor smiled again, but this time it was pure delight. Mark was different. He took the camera. He wanted to see everything, so I showed him. What do you mean? The nurse reached into her pocket and pulled out a small Polaroid photo. She held it up, letting it dangle in front of Laura's face. In the photo, Mark stood in the basement tunnel, holding his camera, but his eyes were gone, replaced by 2 bleeding holes. Behind him stood Eleanor, smiling into the lens. Laura turned her face away, tears spilling down her cheeks. You monster, Eleanor sighed. No, I'm a healer. I keep them from waking. That's my job. It was always my job. The syringe hissed as she pressed the plunger, expelling a thin stream of air. This will help you rest. Laura's panic turned to fury. She yanked hard against the straps, her muscles burning. Don't touch me, she screamed, but the nurse didn't stop. She leaned in close and whispered, Hush now. It only hurts if you fight. The needle pierced Laura's arm. The world tilted sideways, everything blurred. The lights flickered faster, turning the room into a strobe of nightmare images. The faces of the dead patients twitching, Eleanor's smile splitting wider, the walls bleeding red, and then darkness. When Laura opened her eyes again, the light had changed. It was warmer, softer, sunlight streaming through a window. She was sitting in a hospital bed, wearing clean clothes. The straps were gone. Her wrists were free. She blinked, disoriented. The room looked new. Freshly painted walls, a vase of flowers on the table. Outside, she could hear birds. A nurse entered, young and cheerful. Good morning, Miss Finch. How are we feeling today? Laura stared at her. Where am I? You're at St Helena Medical Center, the nurse said brightly. You were found unconscious near the old asylum. You've been here 3 days. Laura felt her throat tighten. The old asylum? Yes, the one they demolished last year. You must have wandered into the ruins. You're lucky to be alive. For a long moment, Laura didn't speak. The nurse smiled, adjusted her IV, and left the room. Laura swung her legs over the side of the bed. Her hands were trembling. She walked to the window, pushing aside the curtain. Outside, the world looked peaceful. The new hospital grounds surrounded by green fields. No sign of the old building, no sign of anything wrong. But as she turned away, she froze. On the nightstand lay a small Polaroid photo. It showed her lying on the same bed, asleep. But standing beside her was the old nurse, Eleanor Gray, smiling. The air went cold. The lights flickered. From the hallway came the squeak of rubber soles against tile. Laura backed away, her heart hammering. No, this isn't real. The door creaked open. The same young nurse stepped in, but her eyes had changed. One was milky white, The other was dark and sharp. She smiled. "It's time for your medicine, Ms. Finch." Laura screamed and lunged for the door, shoving past her. The hallway stretched endlessly, sterile and bright. She ran, her bare feet slapping against the cold floor. Every door she passed bore the same nameplate: E. Gray, E. Gray, E. Gray. The lights above her flickered and buzzed. She turned a corner and found herself standing in the same hallway again. She ran the other way. Same result. No matter where she turned, she always ended up where she started. The intercom crackled to life. A voice, calm and distorted, echoed through the building. "Code White, patient 41A has awakened. Prepare the medicine." Laura pressed her hands to her ears, trembling. "No, that's not me. That's not me." The walls began to pulse, as if alive. Veins of red spread through the paint, and the floor turned slick beneath her feet. The scent of disinfectant gave way to rot. From behind her came the sound of a camera shutter. Click, click, click. She turned. Mark stood there, holding his camera, his face half decayed, his mouth twisted into something resembling a grin. "Smile," he whispered. The flash exploded. When the light faded, Laura was back on the steel table, straps cutting into her wrists again. Helena stood over her, humming softly. The syringe in her hand gleamed under the light. Laura's voice broke into sobs. "Please, I just want to go home." Helena's face softened. "You are home. You always were." She pressed the needle into Laura's arm. As the liquid slid into her veins, the world began to fade once more. This time, she didn't fight it. The last thing she saw was the faces of the others: Tom, Mark, and the dozens of silent patients, standing in a perfect circle around her, watching. Their lips moved in unison, whispering words that melted into her dreams. "We're awake now." Weeks later, a local magazine published a feature about a new discovery. In the ruins of the demolished St Helena Asylum, workers had found a sealed room untouched by time. Inside were hundreds of photographs of patients, doctors, and staff, all staring directly into the camera, all dated from different decades. At the end of the article was one last image, a black and white photo of a woman lying on a steel table, eyes open, mouth slightly parted, as though she'd just spoken. The caption read, "Laura Finch, admitted October 29th, 1977, status, under treatment," and beneath it, a handwritten note. "Special thanks to our new staff photographer, Mark Daniels. Some nights, locals say they can still see flashes of light through the fog where the asylum once stood, like a camera firing in the dark. And if you listen closely, you can hear a woman's voice, calm and near your ear. It's time for your medicine."
Please like and subscribe channel Fear Frequency for more horror stories. Thank you.